Hey, today's daf, Bez Hashem, is Masechta Bava Basra, daf Tzadik Gimel, and we're going to begin from Tzadik Beis Amud Beis by Meisvei. Just to recap, so that's going to be the subject of today. The subject of today is like this: a man bought a ox. He bought an ox, and it turns out that the ox was a wild ox, and because it's a wild ox, you can't plow with it. You can only shecht it and eat it. So can he ask his money back? So can he ask his money back from the seller? The seller will say, "Wait a second, you you bought the animal, so it's too bad on you." But the buyer can say, "Listen, my intention, as most people who buy these oxen, my intention is to use it for plowing. So I'm part of the majority that buys oxen for plowing. There is a minority that only buys oxen to slaughter. So I'm from that majority. I meant to buy it for plowing. Now that the animal is not usable for plowing, so we're going to learn right over here. Let's see, 3 lines from the top. Rav Omar Hareze Mekach. Rav says it's a whole mistake. Basra we go after the majority. Viruba Liridia Zavni. Most people buy an animal for plowing. Okay, and therefore the whole thing, the seller has to give the money back. Ushmul Amalach Shmuel will say, no, the seller does not have to give the money back. Because when do you go after Roiv? Isura. Only if you have not sure. If you're not sure if something is kosher or not, piece of meat, you don't know if it came from this store or that store. If the majority of the stores are kosher, then you go after the majority.
If, if you tell him that I want the ox to work, there's a difference. But he didn't ask him for this, so he didn't care what he bought for.
That's right, exactly, exactly. Because he didn't say use what I'm buying the ox for.
No, that's not the man's fault.
Not the seller's fault. And even if he can say, "Oh, but most people want the ox to be used as plowing," the Gemara says, Shmuel says, you don't have to give the money back. Loy. Money, you have to be saying up front. And if he wasn't up front, so then basically he's saying,
then it's his.
That's it. Too bad. The seller does not have to give the money back. So
Right.
ask you a question. The Mishnah says, the Brisa says,
Please with the rabbi.
Alma afro that became an almona or became a grusha. Now she's tiny. Now, if a woman becomes an almuna or a grusha, so she gets the ksiba. The question: what was she when she got married? I married. She says, "Besulani Nisesi. I was married as a young lady, and therefore my ksuba is 200. Who I married as loy. You were married as an almona, and therefore, you're supposed to only get 100, right? So machlek is what her ksuba was. We don't know. So if it was Adim, Shiyatsa behinuma Beroisha Perua Ksubasa Masayim. If there was Adim that remember the wedding, you see, they didn't have photographers, but there were people that remembered the wedding, and they saw that she was wearing a veil like a basula, or she didn't have her shaitel, so she was a basula. And she went to Basar Masayim, she gets 200, but she needs Adim, right? Otherwise, we're going to say that no, she was married when she was married as a Ba'ula, Almana. She was so the Gemara says Tama the Ike Edim, only because Edim, that's why she gets 200. Like Edim, if there was no Edim law, she doesn't get 200, says the Gemara Vamai. Why don't we believe them? Lema Hoylech Roiv Acharoiv Nashim. Let's go by after Roiv Nashim. What are Roiv Nashim? Roiv Nashim are Basilis. The Rav Nachim Besulas Nisais. Most women are Besulas. So the question is, why according to Rav, according to Shmuel, when it comes to money, you don't go after the majority, right? If you don't go after the majority. So according to Shmuel, we don't go after the majority. So here, clear, we do go after we don't go after the majority, and so we do. So the question is according to Rav. Rav says when it comes to money, you go after Roiv, Basaruba Azlinan. So who cares if there was Adam? Most women are Basulis Nisis, and therefore, most women are Basulis Nisis. Even without Adam, she should get 200. So this is a question against Rav, and it's a proof to Shmuel. Amar Ravina says no. Because yes, you can decide a money problem by going after the majority, right? You can decide a money problem, according to Rav, by going after the majority. Here, the majority that you want to go after has something wrong with it. Why? You could say, you're right. Most women that get married as a basula. Umiyat almonas. And miyat is almonas. So probably, statistically, this woman was a basula when she got married. But the problem is, if you're marrying a basula, everybody knows about it. Since this woman, when she got married, nobody remembers the wedding. So Isra le Ruba. So then there's no roiv. So unless there's Adam, then we won't give her the 200. Because otherwise, it's strange that nobody remembered that and remembered it. There was a coil. Everybody, the people talked about it. So the Gemara says, "Ikol hanisuis besulas yesh le'en koil." If everybody, it's in the news. Whenever a basula gets married, it's in the news. Ki ike edem hava. Even if there is an aid that says that I was there at the wedding and I saw her wearing a veil. But mida less law call, but since it wasn't in the news, maybe they're lying. Maybe if nobody knows about it, and the only way you know she was a psula was because of these two Adam, why don't we assume that the Adam are lying? Nobody heard of it. Answers the Gemara, right? Elaroiv hanisuis. Most people who are married to basula yesh lehen koil. It's made it into the news. Somebody remembers something, but maybe they don't remember the wedding. V'zu hoyel ve'en lo koil. Since she doesn't have a sound, Israel Ruba, the roiv is a little bit weakened. And because the roiv is weakened in this case, that's why in this case, you don't go after the roiv. But most of the time, Rav will say that if it's a good roiv, you will decide a money situation going after the majority. Let's give you another example, another question. Again, Rav says you go after the roiv to decide a money issue, and therefore the seller can get back his money. The seller has to give back the money. The buyer is in the right. And Shmuel says not. Tashma, come in here. Hamoicher eved lechaver. Someone sells a slave to his friend. Okay? Benimtza ganav kuyustis. And we find that this eved was a gambler, let's say, or he was a thief. So he giyoi, too bad. The seller does not have to give the money back. List the mezuyin and muchtav lamalchus, if he was on death row, right? Then this guy sold a death row eved to his friend. Then you can give it back because if it's on death row, I mean, I didn't buy an eved. This is somebody that's destined to be killed by the government. So therefore, it's not a good sale. But Reisha, the beginning, when you bought an eved, a person buys an eved and finds out that it's a kleptomaniac, right? Or it's a gambler. My tama, so why can't you ask for your money back? Lav mishum deruba hachis nihu. Since most of them is most avodim aganovim. And with this understanding, the purchaser bought it, and he accepted himself that there's a good chance, there's a high probability that the slave that I bought is going to be a ganav. So we see from here that with mamanis, we do go after the roiv. And therefore, this is a question according to Shmuel. Since Shmuel doesn't go after roiv, so therefore, why wouldn't the guy get his money back? He can maybe the eved was maybe he was looking to buy an eved that was not a thief or anything like that. So why can't he get his money back according to Shmuel? Answers the Gemara loy. You have to say that not that most avodim are ganovim. Hula hachisne. All goyish slaves are considered ganovim. And if all goyish slaves are considered ganovim, then the guy that bought it, He accepted it upon himself. Even Shmuel will say, listen, he knows 100% of the time that he's buying an Eved, this Eved is going to be a Ganav. Therefore, of course, he's not going to get his money back because by again entering into the transaction, you're automatically accepting upon yourself that most 100% of the time that this Eved is going to be a Ganav. You're going to have to watch out for him. So there is no money back on this transaction. Toshma, come in here. Come in here. Shar shenagach hasapara. An ox was chasing after a cow, and the cow was pregnant. Okay, we know this cow was pregnant, but then when we come to the cow, we find the fetus dead on the ground. So now the question is, I don't know, maybe the cow gave birth before the goring of the ox, and therefore the owner of the ox does not have to pay for the fetus because it didn't kill it. Or possibly, as soon as it got the goring, then Yolda, it gave birth to this dead fetus. And therefore, who caused the fetus to die? It was the ox. So the owner of the ox has to pay for the goring of the cow, but also for the loss of the embryo, of the fetus. So we don't know what's the din with the embryo. Was it killed by the ox or not? So it's a tam. First of all, for the cow damage, it pays half damages, like any tam pays half damages. Uravia levlad, but it only pays a quarter of the damages for the fetus. It would pay half damage if we knew for sure that this ox, as a tam, killed this fetus. But since we're not sure, so therefore we split it in half. It pays only a quarter. Now, here comes the bomb question. The amai, right? According to Rav, you go after the roiv, right? Lema, let us say, hailech acharoiv paris. Let's go after most oxen, most cows. V'roiv paris misarbes v'yoldis. Most cows, when they're pregnant, they give birth to a healthy child. So therefore, most of the time, I could say I have a majority. If I put betting odds on it, it was the ox that caused this miscarriage. So So this was for sure this miscarriage was caused by the ox, and therefore, why do you pay only a quarter of the damages? You should pay half damages, like half damages for the vlad, because I could say majority of the situation is that this ox caused the dead fetus. So this question is against Rav. Rav says you can decide and collect money even though you only have a majority, that you're in the right 80% of the time. So that's enough to draw money out of somebody. So therefore, why doesn't we draw money out of the owner of the ox to pay half the damages? Because most of the cows would have given birth to a healthy child, and this one didn't, so it must have been caused by the ox. And says the Gemara, no. Hasam over there, Mishum, the Mesapkalam. I still have a doubt. It's not really a roiv. The Ikalamema Makama Asa, I could say, you're right. It was the animal miscarried because of the ox. But I could say, it could say mikama also mibiyasa hipila. I could say that really the ox caused the damage, but indirectly, as it scared it. As the ox was charging towards the cow got scared and miscarried, and therefore it's not the ox direct hit that caused the miscarriage, and because of that, he's only a cause. The ox was a cause of the miscarriage, but not a direct hit that caused that made the miscarriage. And because of that, the owner of the ox perhaps is not liable. The ikalamema, but I could say, machoira asa, it came from the back, and the cow did not see the ox coming. So therefore it was not scared. Umingach noncha, and it's because the ox directly hit and gored the cow, vepila, that caused the miscarriage. So therefore it's not even a roiv. So hava monma mutal b'safik, it's a 50-50 chance. The cholamon mutal b'safik cholkem, and therefore it's a 50-50 chance if the fetus was miscarried because of the ox or not. Therefore, the owner of the ox will only pay a quarter of the damages. Let us say that this machlekes between Rav and Shmuel is a machlekes actually in Tanoim. What's the machlekes Tanoim? Shor shahoya roya. Let's say there were a couple of oxen grazing in the ground together. The nimtza shar harabitzida, and one of the ox is dead. Now you have two oxen, right? an ox right near each other, maybe a few oxen, but right next to an ox there's a dead ox, and the one to its right, the right next to it, is a known goring animal. So I could say my assumption is I could assume that this animal gored this ox. The answer is even though this one was gored, and the animal next to the gored animal was an animal that does goring. It's a muad to do goring. Or let's say it was bitten off. Let's say it was the animal next to it is a known biter. So I could assume that my assumption would be that this animal was killed because of the other animal. Nope. You don't say, I don't say, oh, for sure that this one, that the animal next to it did the goring, or the animal next to it did the biting, because you're not 100% sure, you don't have witnesses. Even though the assumption is that it was gored by the animal next to it. Rabacha says, Rabacha gives you another situation. He says a similar situation, but he argues. He says, let's say you have a camel that's mating between camels. So when the camel's mating, it's really, really wild. And it killed another camel. Now I could assume that one camel killed the other camel because it's that season where camels kill each other. So you could assume that, bingo, that this camel killed the other animal, and the owner of that camel should be able to collect damages. So the Gemara says, Savruha, the ones that wanted to align the machlekes between Rav and Shmuel to this machlekes between Ravacha and the Tanakama, hold the Ruba v'Chazaka the Dadininu. A Rive and Chazaka, an assumption, is both one of the same. A Rive is a majority, and a Chazaka means that you have this animal is most likely to do the damage. That's the assumption, because it's that time, this is the animal that did damage before. And a chazaka means or for the camel, it's that season that this camel does damage. So Lema, let us say, since the Tanakama holds that you don't have to pay, and Ravacha holds you do have to pay, Rav, the Amak Rabacha, Rav would hold like Rabacha, that just like chazaka, you go after chazaka to make somebody pay, you could also go after Rive to make somebody have to pay. And you go after Mominus after the Rive. You could decide a law based on the majority. Shmuel says Tanakama. Shmuel holds like the Tanakama that you don't have to pay, because unless you're 100% sure, you can't make the person pay. Rav says no. Another Amri, I could align myself afilu Tanakama, even according to the Tanakama. Tanakama said that the goring ox next to the gored ox, you don't have to pay. Ad kan like Tanakama, the Tanakama only says over the Hasam Ela Deloy Azlin and Basar Chazaka. You don't go after the Chazaka, because the reason why you don't go after the Chazaka over there, even though you could assume that this ox gored the other ox, but there's a lot of other oxen in the area. It's perhaps another ox gored this ox. So therefore, you can't make, just because this one is standing next to that ox, you can't make that assumption that it was gored by this ox. Maybe it was gored by the majority of other oxen. You don't know. But if you have a roiv, that you can say the majority of people that buy animals, oxen, let's say in the Rav's case, are for using it for plowing, and he got the raw end of the deal. So then maybe he gets his money back, because in that case, the Tanakama would say you go after the roiv. Shmuel Amalach, and Shmuel will tell you, another Amri lafilil Rabacha. I could align my opinion even according to Rabacha. Aracha said you pay. Ad kan Rabacha also over there. Rabacha said you pay. Ela da'az linim basa chazaka duhu gufay muchsa, because the assumption is that this camel that is mating is a wild animal and is going to kick anybody in its vicinity. So therefore, the camel is the presumptive guilty one over here. If we find a dead camel, we assume that this camel that was mating did the killing. Okay, and that's a good assumption. Because it's this camel that's in front of me that I can assume that did the damage. But a ruba that's not in front of me. It's a ruba that's in the books. That most people in the world buy a animal for plowing is not the roiv over here. It's a roiv outside in the world, outside. It's not a roiv that's in front of me. And in that case, perhaps you don't go after a roiv to decide a money problem. And because of that, even though the guy could say, "Oh, my intention was to buy the ox for plowing," but it's a roiv because most people in the world buy oxen for plowing. Perhaps you're from the minority that doesn't buy oxen for plowing. And therefore, the seller, according to Shmuel, does not have to give the money back. Tashma, come in here. This is our Mishnah. If you buy fruits for your friend and he planted it and it didn't sprout, and somehow you bought fruits, right? And it didn't sprout. You bought it and you're using it as seeds and it's not growing anything. Even if it's flax seeds, which there is majority people buy flax seeds to plant. Some people eat flax seeds. There's no money back. My afilu. What is the afilu? What does that mean? Loy lav afilu zerapishin the rubel is reasoning. Most people buy flax to plant. Va'afila hochi loy azlina basariba. You don't have to go give the money back. So this Mishnah, our Mishnah, aligns ourselves with Shmuel, because the seller does not have to give the money back, even though the buyer can say, "I bought these flax seeds to plant." The seller can say, but the minority of people buy flax seeds to eat. So therefore, you didn't specify in the transaction that you're buying it to plant, and therefore, I don't have to give you the money back. So our Mishnah aligns itself with Shmuel and not like Rav. So the Gemara says, you're right, Tanoihi. It happens to be a machlekes Tanoi. The Tanya we learned in a braysa, Hamoicha peres lechaber uzram v'loy tzamcho, zarin gino shein nechol and chay brachir yusad, zera pishtan eina chay brachir yusad. So our Mishnah says if you buy fruits, even if it's zera pishtan, if it says on the bag that these seeds are planting, like you buy it in a Home Depot, so then of course you got to get your money back. But if it's flax seeds that you're buying from just a grocery store, and you want to say that most people buy the flax seeds for planting, the Tanakama holds the seller does not have to give the money back. Rabbi Yossi says, we go to Amar Beis, noisin loy to you have to give the money back. Amru loy, but here the Tanakama, there's another Chachamim that said to Rabbi Yossi, Haber loikin oislu darim acherim, that how could you argue and say that you have to give the money back, because he could say that I'm from the majority, but there is another majority over here that other people buy flax seeds for other purposes, and therefore the Chachamim answered Rabbi Yossi, you shouldn't have to give the money back because many people buy these flax seeds for other purposes, maybe for eating, for health benefits, for example, if there's one person buying 10 saw for planting, there's 100 people that buy it for one saw for eating and for, and so we should go after the majority. Okay, so it's a machlekes what majority you go after. So therefore, man tanoi. So who is the machlekes tanoim over here that you want to say that Rav goes like this opinion, and the Shmuel will go like that opinion? Do you want to say it's Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Yossi says that you go after the majority and you have to give the money back. Then who is the one that will go like Shmuel? The Amur Loi, the other Tana, this Tana over here, Tavaya Basaruba Aslina. They both say you go after a Roiv. Mar Oza Basaruba Denashe. One person goes after Roiv of people, and Roiv people buy the most people are buying the small bags for eating. Umar Sava and the Rabbi Yossi holds you go Basaruba Dezriya. Most people are buying it to plant. So basically, they both would go after a majority, but you don't know which majority. So that would be the machlekes. So which Tana would align himself with Shmuel that you never go with majorities? Ella, the answer is Itanakama Rabbi Yossi, Itanakama v'Amrulai. It's either the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi, or Itanakama v'Amrulai. So it's both Rabbi Yossi and the Amrulai Tanoim that hold that you go after the majority. But the first Tana didn't care what the majority is. You never have to give the money back because you don't decide money-ish situations by going after the majority. So basically, what the Gemara just concluded is that this machlekes between Rav and Shmuel, can you decide a money matter by just going after the majority? Rav says yes, Shmuel says no, is actually machlekes Tanoim in the Brisa. Tana Rabbanim. Let's say a man bought seeds, okay, and you specifically bought it to plant, and he planted it and it didn't work. It was faulty seeds, okay? So he gets his money back. But what does he get money back? But he could always say, I had to hire workers to plant the seeds. Do you get even your expenses back? Or you just get the money, the value of the seeds? It's a big question. You also, let's say you return something to a store. You bought something. So, but there's gas and the item that you bought is faulty, but there's gas and time spent going to the store and returning it. So mahu nice and light. What do you have to give back? So the Tanakama holds the meizera v'loy hatzah. You have to give back, just the seller has to give back the expenses of the seeds and not the expenses of what the item who purchased it had to invest in it. The yeshoimrim and others say af haitzah. You have to also pay for the expenses. So man yesh oimrim, who is the yesh oimrim? The Gemara says, Rav Chizda said, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel here. It's Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. I'm going to skip a little bit over here because the Gemara is just going to say it's this Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. The Gemara wants to say it's Rav Shimon ben Gamliel of our Mishnah. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel will hold, not only does the seller have to give back the money for the seeds, but he also has to give back money for the guy having to hire people to plant those seeds. So it's a real generous return. The time we learned to the Brisa. Listen to this. A guy gives wheat to a grinder to grind. And he didn't soak the wheat, and therefore and he made it faulty. He made it low grade flour, or he made it bran because he didn't do it properly. You get fine flour to a baker. And he misbaked the bread, and now it's faulty bread. Or behema l'tabach, you give an animal to a shaychet v'nibla, and he didn't shecht it right. He made it nevela. Chayiv and they can the guy has to pay for the animal. Very good. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rav Shimon says not only does he have to pay for the animal, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that the shaychet has to pay the guy who gave him the animal. Now he has to pay the embarrassment that he has, that he was going to give meat by his chasana. Now he has no meat to give, so he's all embarrassed. So you have to pay for that as well. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. Minig gadol hay b'Yerushalayim. Shimon Gamliel says there was a great minig in Yerushalayim. You hired a caterer, right? And he messed up, right? You hired a caterer to make a kiddush for you, and he messed up. The children spoiled. Not only do you have to pay for the kiddush, he has to pay back the money that you paid for the kiddush, but he also has to pay back the busha that you had. You have to pay for the embarrassment and the embarrassment of your guests that now they came for a party and it's all spoiled. So therefore, Rav Shimon Gamliel says not only you have to give the money back, but you also have to give the made boishes back, the embarrassment. But the Tanakama holds no, you just have to give the loss, but nothing more. One last thing, since we're talking about minig in Yerushalayim, mapa prusa al gabe pesach. If a person put a handkerchief outside his door, calls mancha mapa prusa, as long as the shmat is hanging by his door, that's a sign orchen ichnosen. That means he's welcoming guests. But if he removed the shmata, the towel from his door, that's a sign that there's no vacancy. He doesn't want guests. That was guests are not invited over here. That was their simon in Yerushalayim. So ends the daf Tzadi Gimel. Okay.